Chapter 16. The Earth Before They Left. "We wish all passengers a wonderful good morning." Laura startled awake and sat bolt upright in her bed. It took her a few seconds to remember where she was. On the ship, on the way to the airport to French Guiana. A crackling sound echoed through the room, and Laura looked upward to the ceiling near the entrance, where a speaker was mounted in the corner. "Preparations for breakfast are in full swing. In half an hour, all passengers are invited to proceed to the dining hall to enjoy a morning meal. In your wardrobe, you will find the clothing we have selected for you. Please get ready." Elspeth emerged sleepily from her room, rubbing her eyes. The speaker crackled loudly once more, then fell silent. "Good morning, sweetheart," Laura said as she got up and walked over to the wardrobe. Inside, several identical outfits hung neatly on hangers. She pulled one out and examined it. It consisted of white black trousers made of thin fabric and a black wrap-style top, resembling a short fabric robe with wide sleeves. On the chest, a radiant sun was emblazoned, the same emblem the soldiers had worn on their uniforms. At the bottom of the wardrobe stood a pair of black sneakers with thin soles. The wardrobes in the other rooms held the same clothing for Elspeth and Joelle. Laura helped them tie their tops, then got dressed herself, pulling her red curly hair back into a ponytail. Together they left their room and made their way through the ship's wide corridors, surrounded by many other people dressed in the same black clothing, heading towards the clearly marked breakfast hall. The hall was a long, wide room, with two lengthy tables set up in the center. Baskets of fresh bread stood on them, along with trays filled with cheese, eggs, cold cuts, and jam. There were even coffee pots as well as small containers of milk and sugar. Slowly the room filled with arriving people. Many broke down in tears of joy, while others froze in disbelief before rushing towards the tables, admiring the laden plates and trays. Some sat down hesitantly, while others greedily reached straight into the bread baskets, piling their plates with the treats laid out before them. Laura looked around in disbelief as she entered the room, then let out a laugh when she saw the abundance of food on the tables. She took Elspeth by the hand, and together they walked over to a table and sat down on an empty bench. She placed a piece of bread on Elspeth and Joelle's plates. When Elspeth spread it with jam and took a large bite, she closed her eyes and chewed blissfully. "It's so good," she murmured, and Joelle laughed. "I don't even remember the last time I ate bread," Elspeth said. "Me neither," Laura replied softly. She smiled as she watched them eat, but the smile faded when her thoughts drifted to Jared. The realization that she would never be able to share this moment with him made the bread in front of her taste dry. She set it back on her plate and instead watched Elspeth and Joelle as they ate and laughed. Laura could not remember the last time she had seen Elspeth so full of life. She wondered whether Elspeth often thought of her father too, but she did not ask. "Luck or jeans?" A voice pulled her out of the thoughts. "Huh?" Laura looked up and found herself staring into the face of a woman sitting across from her. She had short-cropped blonde hair, blue eyes, and a narrow, striking face. What?" Laura asked, confused. "Simple," the woman said. "Luck or jeans? Did you get here through the lottery or through the test?" I was lucky," Laura stammered, taken aback. "Huh, figured as much," the woman replied, never taking her eyes off of Laura as she took a bite of her bread. "I guess there have to be some like that too." "What do you mean by that?" Laura asked, half annoyed, half confused. "I'm just saying," the woman said and stood up without elaborating, then moved farther down the table to join a group of people she seemed to know. Laura watched her go, irritation prickling beneath her skin. After breakfast, the children went off to play, and Laura stepped out onto the deck. She walked along the railing, gazing out as the endless masses of water stretching out before her. Had there been a sea here before, she wondered, or had it developed over time? She came to a stop. An icy wind whipped her hair around her ears and into her face. She crossed her arms over her chest in an attempt to shield herself from the cold and pulled her kimono tighter around her body, when suddenly unrest reached her from the far end of the ship. Two people ran past her from behind, and Laura, puzzled, turned around and moved towards the area they had come from. She heard someone scream and quickened her pace. When she reached the door leading back into one of the ship's interior assembly rooms, more and more people were rushing past her, forcing her to squeeze her way through. Inside, she saw a member of the ship's staff bent over a man lying on the floor. Armed soldiers stood at the corners of the room, and the man kneeling over the unconscious body was one of them as well. It was only on a second look that Laura noticed the man's head bent unnaturally far back, blood streaming from his chest and soaking through his black tunic. The crew members pulled the tunic open, and another wave of screams and murmurs rippled through the crowd gathered around him. The man's exposed chest was riddled with slashing wounds and deep knife stabs. Most of the people looked horrified and shaken, but when Laura glanced around, her gaze suddenly met the rigid face of the woman she had seen at breakfast the morning. She was not disturbed. She stood with a small group of people, calmly talking among themselves. "It looks like it was probably someone who got here through the lottery anyway," the woman said. "So, no one who really deserves to be here, or even belonged here." The others around her nodded thoughtfully. Slowly they moved on, but the blonde woman's gaze lingered on Laura for several seconds. A shiver ran down Laura's spine, but she held the woman's stare. She would not show weakness. She would not make herself small, not in front of her. She had earned this place just as much or as little as everyone else on the ship. Laura was not the only one who had won the lottery. All of them had. Some had won the lottery of DNA, others had won the lottery that granted them tickets. No one had been born less important or less worthy. No one had more or less of a right to exist in this world or on this ship. Laura was exactly where she was meant to be and where she wanted to be. 2 men carrying a stretcher pushed past her, lifting the man onto it to carry him away. "Who was it?" Laura asked as they were about to leave the room. "What happened?" "We don't know who the attacker is," one of them replied. "It could be anyone. The motive is unknown." Laura felt a knot tighten in her stomach. After what the woman had said, she thought she knew a motive. She hurried back towards the living quarters. Elspeth and Joelle were off playing somewhere, and she had no idea where they were. What had felt like anticipation and excitement just days ago, a chance at a new life, now felt like a cage. They were trapped with something dangerous, something unknown, and there was no escape. They were locked in with a beast, and for the next few weeks there would be no way out. But worst of all, the realization that whatever was on the ship would most likely remain there forever. What was on the ship would board the space shuttle with them. It would stay, it would come with them, and at least for now, it seemed, it would stop for no one and nothing. She was almost back at the dining hall when she heard Elspeth's voice. She turned around and headed back onto the deck, where Elspeth and Joelle were sitting on the floor talking quietly. "You shouldn't be alone somewhere," Laura said, lifting Elspeth up. "Come back inside with me. You should always stay where there are other people, okay? It's dangerous here." Elspeth grumbled, but followed Laura. When Laura suddenly felt something tug her, she turned around and saw Joelle gripping the fabric of her top. "You don't have to worry," Joel said, looking Laura straight in the eye. "No one can hurt us." For some reason, an icy shiver ran down Laura's spine. "Just listen to what I'm telling you," Laura replied. "Not everyone on the ship means well." "That doesn't concern me," Joelle said flatly and walked away. "Joelle!" Laura called after her, but she had already disappeared around the next corner. "I don't want to go inside either," Elspeth suddenly shouted and tried to run after Joelle, but Laura held her back and dragged her, kicking, struggling, and complaining all the way to their room. Only then did Laura realize how little she actually knew about Joelle, and the thoughts sent a chill through her. This conversation was not over. She needed to find out who this child really was, and who Elspeth was spending her time with.